Well, hello everyone, my name is Paul Mass and I'm an application engineer here at PLM Solutions. I'd like to welcome you to this session in which we're going to talk about how to improve technical documentation by using Cortona3D. As far as today's agenda is concerned, I'm going to begin with a short slideshow in which I'll give a brief overview of PLM Solutions and who we are, followed up with some background information on Cortona3D. After that, I'm going to go into a live demonstration in which I'll show an example of some published output that was created with the tool, and then I'll go into a real live demonstration of how we would create that publication. The two key questions I'd like to answer today are, what does Cortona3D do, and what will Cortona3D do for you? During the first portion of the presentation, I'm going to review some of the typical business challenges around technical documentation that impact many of the companies we work with. And as I'm going through those challenges, you may find that they're similar to some of the problems you're facing today. As I move forward, we'll begin to see how Cortona3D presents itself as a viable solution to these challenges. And then, of course, at the end, I'll make sure that you have our contact information in case you want to get a hold of us for questions or maybe even to set up a follow-up demo for your company, which could be either on-site or over the web. So I'll make sure that that information is up there towards the end of the presentation. So who is PLM Solutions? We are a product lifecycle management solutions provider with extensive expertise in CAD, CAM, CAE, PDM, and technical documentation software. For example, some of the tools we support are Solid Edge and Unigraphics NX for design work. Then we have NX CAM and CAM Express for manufacturing, NX CAE and FEMAP for engineering analysis. And then we have Team Center, Insight, and SharePoint, so we got a few different options there for product data management. And last but not least, also the topic of today's presentation is Cortona3D, which we use for technical documentation and communication. And so not only do we provide software across these disciplines, but we also provide training, tech support, mentoring, consulting, and we provide these services to our clients across most of the eastern half of the United States. Our home base is right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. We do have a training facility here on site, so if you're ever interested in our training services, you could give us a call and talk to us about that. We're able to either come here on site or we do offer training over the web as well. So feel free to give us a call if any one of those services piques your interest. The first question I'd like to answer today is, what will Cortona do? Basically, Cortona3D delivers a suite of tools called the Rapid Author Suite, and it is a leading technical communication software used primarily for technical documentation and technical illustration. The Rapid Author Suite of tools is the only standards-based product that provides business-ready solutions for creating parts catalogs, technical manuals, work instructions, and training materials. Many companies produce documentation by using a combination of disconnected tools such as CAD software, Adobe Illustrator, Word, PowerPoint, and then they even throw some digital photographs in there. So they use an array of different tools kind of to get to the finished product. What Cortona is going to do is replace these disjointed tools with an integrated environment for producing professional level, customer ready documentation. The documentation created by Cortona is then delivered through multiple different methods, including HTML, which can be published on the web or on a tablet such as an iPad, as well as a PDF, which can be printed out and delivered as a hard copy to your end user. This concept of authoring the data once and publishing it to multiple formats is unique to Cortona3D. On the right-hand side of this slide, we can see some of the companies who are currently taking advantage of Cortona's powerful capabilities, such as let's see, we got GE over there, Honda, Rolls-Royce, and Mercury, just to name a few. So we got some big names already taking advantage of Cortona3D. They've seen its power and decided to adopt that into their toolbox. The next question I want to address is, what will Cortona do for you? So we've talked a little bit about what it is and what it does, but what's the value going to be for you? What's the return on investment going to be? And let's start out by talking about some of the business pressures that we see currently in today's market. And I'm going to refer back to a study done by the Aberdeen Group back in 2010. And the Aberdeen Group is an industry analysis group with a practice in the area of technical documentation. And what they identified were some trends that manufacturing companies are facing. In general, they found that there are a few areas that are increasing business pressures, such as accelerated product volume and complexity. The end users are demanding better quality documentation. Companies are trying to achieve shortened development cycles, and that the market competition continues to increase. So what it all boils down to basically is that the demand is for increased volume of content created in less time with fewer resources, and this is exactly what Cortona3D is going to help us to achieve. With Cortona3D, we're going to remedy some of these challenges by reusing existing content to reduce time to market. What I mean there is there's already some properties and metadata in our CAD files that we can extract out of them when we import them into Cortona, so that we're reusing things that already exist. We're going to reduce reliance on text instructions. What you're going to see is that Cortona creates interactive 3D animations. A picture's worth 1,000 words. A video is even better. So if we can create less text and rely more on animations and pictures, I think we can convey our message across to the end user much better. We're also going to make the authoring process much easier and more streamlined for the author and the Tech Pubs group. We're going to just use one tool as opposed to an array of different tools. It's all going to be an integrated environment, the Cortona3D Rapid Author suite of tools. And we're also going to improve the end user experience by allowing them to view richer 3D graphical data. It's really cool to look at. So when we actually get into the live demonstration, you'll see how the published output is really going to make your company stand out if you choose to publish this stuff on the web. So let's take a look at the traditional process for a product design lifecycle. We all know that when we look at this traditional product design lifecycle, at a very basic level there are 5 different phases: design, test, build, deliver, and support. And it's during the last 2 phases that most of the technical documentation is created. However, there seems to be a wall separating the engineering data and the technical publication data. And then to make matters worse, their traditional authoring processes are labor intensive. The Tech Pubs team is usually forced to create text manually, recreate illustrations, take digital photographs, and then if they ever want to show an animation, they usually have to create some type of flash animation with it, which is just a static animation, and you don't really get to edit your viewpoints and things like that. It's just kind of a static, fixed animation. We're going to see that with Cortona3D, we will automatically generate some text. We're able to create illustrations right there or use existing ones, and the 3D animations will be interactive. We can move them around, zoom, rotate, things like that. After they put in all the trouble of authoring these technical documentations, they're then limited to the output formats such as PDF or PowerPoint, which need to be printed off in paper or burned to a CD, then finally delivered to the end user. This whole process results in a costly, error-prone process which often lags the completion of the engineered product. We're usually always waiting on the technical documentation to be finished before we can really ship the product or before we can support the product. It's the goal of Cortona3D to eliminate these deficiencies. So if we were to look at the typical workflow of the integrated solution that Cortona3D offers, it would look something like this. It all begins with your source data, which is typically 3D CAD geometry. Maybe we have an associated bill of materials and other assets such as 2D illustrations. And so we take all of our source geometry and import it into one of the 3 main modules of the Rapid Author suite of tools to begin authoring our technical publication. During this importation process, Rapid Author optimizes the data by removing intellectual property. So we want to take away all the proprietary information so that our parts can't be reverse engineered, and we simplify the structure to create what's called a rapid project. You might compare Rapid Author to Microsoft Office in that Microsoft Office consists of different modules such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So the 3 main modules of Rapid Author are Rapid Catalog, which allows you to quickly and easily create interactive parts catalogs, RapidManual, which is used to create work instructions and manuals, and the way those two differ is that maybe a work instruction would be used to communicate a strict path of steps to the assembly team that must be followed in order to achieve a certain task, whereas a manual might be used out in the field to convey the steps required to complete a service, operational, or maintenance procedure. So we'll see that although they're both created in the same tool, the RapidManual tool, they do have a little bit of differences there, and they're controlled by the template that we use, or also called the specification, which I'll expand on later. And then finally we have the Rapid Learning module, which lets you create interactive computer-based training scenarios which will help to improve the efficiency of your technicians. You can have them sit at a computer and go through a build or disassemble procedure, and it's going to make them sharper technicians, make them more efficient out on the shop floor or out in the field. The beauty of a rapid project is that we only need to import the data once and then can open that project in any one of the modules to create whichever type of technical publication we desire. Once we're done with the authoring process, we can then publish that document out to an array of different formats such as web-ready HTML or XML, hard copy PDF, or even to a tablet or a smartphone. The whole idea here is that we author once, publish to any format. We're trying to reuse the work that we've already put into it. We don't want to have to go start from scratch each time we want to create a new document. Another nice thing about Cortona3D is that it comes out of the box with some standard specifications such as DITA, which is commonly used in the commercial airline industry, S1000D, which is used in military and government applications, or SCORM, which governs the way web-based e-learning documents are laid out. Using one of the delivered specifications creates less work for you and will help create consistency from one document to the next. However, you will have the ability to create a specification that follows your own business rules via the Rapid Specification module. A specification simply governs the look and feel of your published content and can be thought of as a template. So we give you some stuff out of the box. If you want to tweak those templates, you're able to do so, or you can create one completely from scratch to satisfy your own business rules. And then last but not least, we do have the option for the entire authoring process to be managed inside of Siemens Teamcenter, which would allow you to maintain links from your engineering data to your tech pubs, and gives the ability to store rapid project data set along with the published output in Teamcenter for review and shared access. So now that we've kind of heard an overview of the product and learned the value that Cortona3D can bring to your company, let's take a look at a live demonstration of some published output along with what it takes to create a Cortona3D rapid project. As I had mentioned, Cortona3D comes with a suite of products called Rapid Author, and to show you exactly what I mean by that, I'm going to come to my Windows Start button and navigate to the Cortona3D folder, in which I'll see all the different modules that make up that Rapid Author suite. The one I'm going to be focusing on for this presentation is the RapidManual tool, and we're going to use this to create work instructions and repair manuals. If you're interested in seeing a presentation of the Rapid Catalog module or the Rapid Learning module, we have links on our website in which you can view those demonstrations. And just as a heads up, the first portion of those videos are going to be what you've already seen, the slideshow, and the latter half will be the actual live demo of that particular tool. So if you've already watched the slideshow, feel free to fast forward it to the live demo of the module you'd like to see. The way I'd like to start off demonstrating the RapidManual is by showing an example of published output. So what you see on screen now is a finished example, or what we would call published output of a work instruction, and this is actually what the end user would view maybe on your website. And on the left hand side of the screen we have some general information about the work instruction or the job that we're going to perform, and on the right hand side of the screen we have the interactive 3D graphics window where I'm able to rotate that assembly around, zoom in and out, and I can also pan it across the screen as well. In the general information portion, I get to see the job code and the title, summary, and the story behind this is that this is going to be a work instruction that will guide us through the process of rebuilding a brake caliper. We all know that when we're changing our brakes or when we're replacing a brake caliper on a car, there's a core that has to be taken back to the auto parts store and then returned to the manufacturer where the rebuild takes place. So The summaries tell me that this rebuild of the caliper assembly includes new pistons, seals, bleeder valve, guide pins, caliper bolts, and washers. It gives me an expected time for the completion of the job. It tells me that a level 2 technician is required to perform this job, things of that nature. Just below the general information header, I have additional information that's broken out into different tabs. So here I can see on the prerequisite tab that I need to have gone through some safety training in corrosive liquids, sandblasting, general machinery, and hand tools. The next tab over is the bill of materials tab, where I can see all the different components that make up this assembly. And what's really nice about this is that the line item in the bill of materials is actually hotspotted or linked to the 3D representation of that component. So if I were to click, let's say, on this bleeder screw, it's going to highlight that component, zoom to it, and center it in my screen so that I have a visual representation. I can kind of see what that component is. Next to the Bill of Materials tab, I have a Resources tab, which is going to tell me what kind of tools or what kind of consumables that I'm going to need to perform this job. Consumables such as brake fluid, anti-seize, Loctite. These usually aren't in the engineering bill of materials, so we're able to add these type of items to the Resources tab in Cortona 3D. On the Instructions tab, I get to see step by step what I need to do to perform this job, and it also shows me the required parts for this particular step and any required resources down below. On the Document tab, I get to view the document in its entirety. So the difference there between the Instructions tab and the document is that I only see one instruction at a time on the Instructions tab, and the Document tab shows me the document in its entirety if I want to browse to a certain step, and I can activate that step by clicking on it, and it'll automatically go to that portion of the animation. So now let's go ahead and take a look at animation of what this actual job looks like, and I'm going to play it in 2x just in essence of saving time, and as the animation goes through I'll be kind of explaining it in words, and I may pause it at certain areas of interest to show you some of the neat things about Cortona 3D that we can do while creating our animation. So I'm going to hit play here, and we'll see that the first thing I need to do for this job is drain all the brake fluid out of the caliper. I'm going to remove the guide pins, which will allow my old brake pads to be removed. And then I'm going to see this air gun come onto screen, and let me pause it right there actually. The air gun that you see on screen is a tool that typically wouldn't be delivered with your CAD files. What you can do inside of Cortona is import tools into the software and create what's called an object library entry, and these are things like, for our case it's an air gun, but you could put wrenches, a hammer, a screwdriver, any kind of stuff that you're going to want to use visually to convey a certain message to the person viewing the animation. Also notice this text on screen, which is a call out that we're also able to add in the RapidManual tool. And one thing I want to point out is that this is still a completely interactive animation. It's not static. It's not a fixed flash video. If I need to get more clarity by rotating something around or zooming in and out, I'm able to do that, and then when I'm ready to resume I just come down here and hit the play button. And so on the left hand side of the screen it's walking me through the steps. Notice the air gun's pushing out the piston, then we have the bleeder screw coming out, we have the caliper bolts that need to come out and the washers. You can see there those rotation arrows. The Cortona 3D creates those arrows for us. Then we need to replace this inner seal, push out the other piston with the air gun again, we can see that coming back into view, then fish out the old seals with the hook pick. And let me pause it right here. So now we're ready to sandblast the exterior surfaces of the caliper housing and rinse in chemical solution. The text here would be considered a panel text, and the image just above it, the danger corrosive liquids, would be considered a panel image. These are also things that come out of my object library. So they can be a physical 3D thing stored in the object library, or they can be things such as this, where we need to display maybe an image on screen or some text on screen. Another thing I want to draw your attention to is over here in step 9.4, I'm told to inspect piston openings with micrometer to ensure size is within allowable limits. And then notice I have this word figure here, which indicates that I have a figure to look at, which may have some dimensions of allowable limits. This particular image was captured from my existing CAD data. So when we talk about reuse, repurpose data that we may already have, I'm able to import or use an image that I've taken from my CAD drawings. Now this image could very well have been created in the Cortona3D editor, so it's your choice. You have a lot of freedom there of how you want to create or reuse stuff that you already have in your Cortona projects. When I'm ready to go back to my 3D, I can do that and hit play to resume the animation. So we're cleaning the caliper housings, and now we're ready to start reassembling it. I'm going to put some oil on the, brake fluid on the seals and press them back in. Again, that oil can was brought out of the object library. We're going to press in our new pistons, put in a new internal seal, bring the housings back together, put the washers back on, apply Loctites to the bolts, maybe put some anti-seize on the bleeder screw, close the cap on it, put a plug in the bottom, and then we're ready to deliver this to QC and ready to ship after that. So really cool stuff there. So this would be an example of a work instruction. Now I'd like to show what a manual would look like, maybe a repair manual or a maintenance manual. And notice really the only difference here is the layout of the text on the left hand side of the screen. This is a type of procedure that maybe a consumer of your product would be doing at home, or maybe a technician would be doing out in the field, whereas the other one where we were doing the rebuild of the caliper is probably done in more of a manufacturing atmosphere or something of that nature. And the story here is that we have a motorcycle that we want to change the brake pads on. So we'll see some of the similar stuff, but I will pause it of areas of interest. So let me go ahead and play the animation. Again, it's at 2x. We have a motorcycle stand coming in to lift the back of the bike up. We have some tools coming in that we've pulled from the object library to take off the axle nut. Again, we can see those rotation arrows showing us the direction of rotation for the nut, and also the bolt that holds that caliper in. And let me pause it right here. Notice the sectioning and changing of colors of the objects were all done in Cortona as well. So your TechPubs author isn't going to have to go back to the CAD operator and ask them to maybe adjust the CAD colors or create some special section views. They're going to be able to do that right inside of Cortona3D. They have complete control over the look and feel of their projects. And what I'm trying to convey here is I've changed the kind of this inner sleeve that the axle goes through in the bearings a different color, and I've changed the rim and the wheel to a different color to provide contrast. And I'm trying to show you that the axle only needs to be slid out far enough to remove the caliper. So really cool stuff. We can convey the message simply with pictures and video. So let me go ahead and play again. Now the caliper is ready to drop down away from the axle. I'm going to slide the axle back in and put the washer and nut there just for safekeeping while we're changing the brake pads. I'm able to hide the objects that I no longer need, pull out the guide pins, which are going to allow the brake pads to be removed. Then we're going to see the housings go transparent in color, and so that we can see the pistons being pushed back in. Kind of we're resetting their position, putting the new brake pads in, sliding the guide pins back in. The motorcycle comes back into view. We're going to put our caliper back up into place, attach the hardware. I mean, you can put and notice that there's torque specs over in the document on the left hand side, so everything we need to complete this job is right here for us. Take it off the bike stand, and then we're ready to go do a wheelie and ride off into space. So really neat stuff there with the Cortona3D tool. Now that we've got to see an example of a work instruction and a manual, I want to go inside of the tool and actually take a look at what it would require of us to create these types of projects. So here I am inside of the RapidManual module, and I want to create a project that conveys to the end user how to replace the internal seal on that caliper. Maybe we've noticed that it's leaking some brake fluid, and we know that that internal seal needs to be replaced. So I'm going to create a work instruction, and by the way I start out is creating a new project, and I'm going to give it a title, Replace Internal Seal. And then I'm going to select my specification, and again the specification is just a template which governs the look and feel of my project. Once I've done that, I can say OK, and now I'm ready to import some data. What that does is fires up the Rapid Generator tool, and this is a tool that's used to import data. Notice that we support all of the major CAD packages. We have some profiles that are delivered to you out of the box, or we have a configurable data import tool, and that's what I'm going to choose to use. You can create these profiles using the Rapid Configuration module, and what we do inside of there is tell it how we want to extract the metadata and where to map it inside of our project. I'm going to come out here and select my assembly, and what it's doing right now is it's stripping away all the intellectual proprietary data so that this can't be reverse engineered when we publish it to the web, while at the same time extracting the metadata and mapping it to certain locations in my project. On the left hand side I can see my assembly structure. The first thing I want to do is show that assembly and bring it to the center of the screen. I'm going to pin down my metadata table over here, and notice at first when my assembly comes in it's kind of blocky and low resolution. I do have the ability to throttle that resolution up to its initial quality. And the reason why we would want to have this type of control is maybe sometimes we want some components to be high resolution, nice and crisp and clear, but other items or components that aren't as important to us, we can throttle their resolution down. And what this does is it makes our published output, our final project size, smaller, so we're not eating up as much memory. The first thing I want to do is delete any components that I'm not going to use. This little plug down here, I'm going to go ahead and hide that from my project. And then I'm going to come over to my metadata field and fill out some of the general information that we're going to see in that work instruction. So the prerequisite may be that I need to know about general motorcycle maintenance. And the job code, I can just say GR 1234, give it a number there. The summary will be fixes a leaking caliper, and for the title we'll call it internal seal replacement. For a work type it's just going to be a general repair. The role would be technician level 1. The expected time for this job is 30 minutes. Work cell is not applicable. The previous job that needs to be completed is that we need to remove the caliper from motorcycle. The next job would be to install and bleed brake lines. Work order not applicable, and the revision of this document is maybe revision A. So this is where I fill out all of the general information about the job. Once I've done that, I'm ready to come down to my procedure editor and start creating the animation which will convey the message to the person viewing it. And I want to start out by adding a new group. This is going to be my steps, so it'll be step 1, and this is going to be to remove the guide pins. And it's good practice to start out with a good camera position, so I'm going to select my item, which is the whole assembly, and I'm going to start out by adding a new action. And what that does is it brings up my new action dialog, and all of my actions are described in simplified technical English. And when I first heard that term I thought it was made up, but it is actually a controlled language that was developed in the aerospace industry and has since been adopted across a wide variety of different industries. And it is exactly what it sounds like. We have things like detach, attach, disconnect, connect, loosen, tighten, open, close, remove, things like that. The first thing I want to do is point the camera to the object so I can start out with a good viewpoint. And now I'm ready to actually start maybe removing these guide pins. I'm going to adjust my viewpoint, select the object that I want to act upon, create a new action for that, and it's going to be remove the object. Notice that when I select the parent action, I have different variances of that action. The one I'm going to use is flash, transform, and make invisible. So it's going to flash the object to draw our attention to it, transform it, meaning move it, and then it'll make it invisible at the very end. So I can say OK. I can expand that action to see the different commands that make up that action. What I want to adjust is my transform value. And with the use of this manipulator tool, it's very easy to adjust the location or position of items on screen. I can hit apply and OK. If I refresh my animation and go back to the original position, I can see that it flashes the object, pulls it out, and makes it invisible. The next thing I want to do is remove the one on the other side, and since I have already created that action once, I can simply duplicate that action and change the object which it's being applied to by clicking on the underlined text of that object, linking it to a new item, and I want to update my viewpoint as well to the current one. So at this point I'll have both of my guide pins being removed, and now I'm ready to create a new group, and this will be step 2, which is to remove the brake pads, and I want them to be a child of the job. I'll adjust my viewpoint maybe to be something like that. Select the object I want to act on and apply a new action. This is going to be another remove action, remove the object. And for this action, this transform, I want it to be a 2-step transform. I need the brake pad to come up a little bit and in, and then from there I need to rotate it out into the screen. So I come over to my timeline and I add a new key point, and I double click on that key point to define the location of my first transform step. So it needs to come out a little bit and maybe up so that it clears the caliper housing. That looks pretty good. And I want to copy those coordinates so I can pick up where I left off when I go to my last key point. So I'm going to go to my last key point by double clicking on it. I'm going to paste the coordinates, and then maybe I can bring it out a little bit, up. Maybe I want to rotate it so I can get a good view of it. That manipulator tool is very intuitive and easy to use and helps me to adjust my items on screen. And maybe I want it to look something like that. I can hit apply. And what I want to do here is create some 2D graphics. So I'm going to go to my 2D preview and create a 2D image. What this is going to do is allow me to give it a name. I'm going to call it remove brake pads. And if I hit edit, it fires up the Cortona 2D Editor Pro. And notice that this is a CGM and it's going to stay nice and crisp and clean as I zoom in and out. Sometimes when we're dealing with JPEGs, they distort or pixelize as we zoom in and out. We're not going to see that type of behavior with the images created inside of Cortona. Maybe I want to add a line here coming from the housing out to the brake pad. I can increase the width of it and maybe put a little arrow at the end, kind of conveying that we're pulling the brake pads out. And maybe I can add an image of someone throwing something away because we want to discard the old brake pads. And I could also add some text here. Maybe I'll bring the font size up to 20 and I'll say remove and discard old brake pads. And then I'm able to move that text around very easily. Maybe I'll put it something right about there. Once I'm done making the edits to my 2D graphic, I can save that and exit the Cortona 2D editor and resume with my animation. So I have one brake pad out. I'm going to duplicate that and apply that same transform to the other brake pad. Of course, I'll need to come in here and adjust my key points. Maybe let's see how this one's clashing. Maybe I need to bring that one out a little bit to about there. It's high enough to where it's clearing the housings. I'm going to copy those coordinates, go to my end key point, paste those coordinates to pick up where I left off. Maybe I want to bring it out, up, rotate it a bit. Something about like that. Yeah, I like that right there. So I'll hit apply, OK, and then refresh. The next thing I want to do is remove my screws. So I'm going to add a new step here. Remove caliper screws. Say OK. And maybe adjust my viewpoint a little bit to where I can see both of them. I'm going to select the screw, add a new action, and this time instead of just remove the object, I'm going to choose remove the threaded fastener so it rotates at the same time. So I have flash, rotate, anti-strobe, which will include an arrow, shift, which gives it a little bit of more of a move after it's done rotating, and make invisible. So I'm going to say OK here, expand my action to see the different commands that make up that action, and adjust the things that I need to adjust. So the screw value I want to adjust, maybe pull it out to about there for its final location. Select apply. I want the rotation to be on, and I want to show the arrow. I want to specify the arrow radius and the offset of the arrow so it doesn't clash with the other 3D objects as the screw's coming out. I can say OK. And so now let me refresh that, and let me adjust my shift length too. The shift length is the linear movement that the screw continues to travel in after it's done rotating. So maybe I'll take that down to 0.5, and we can play that. So it flashes it, it rotates the screw, shows that arrow, shifts it out a little bit more, and then makes it invisible. I can apply that same action by duplicating it and editing the object to which it's being applied on. We've seen that a couple times now. It's very easy. It creates less work on us. But what we haven't seen yet is what's called an action union. So I'm going to create a new action union so that both of those screws come out at the same time. So now if I were to hit play, I can see that both the screws are going to come out, and typically at this point what I would do is remove those washers, but in essence of saving time, I'm going to skip ahead and just separate the caliper housings now. Inside of this caliper housing is a piston and a seal, and currently we have these washers here too. I want to move all of these elements away from the other housing, but since they're not a sub-assembly over here in my item tree, what I can do is make a collection of those items. I could readjust my item tree to make them a sub-assembly, but I think an easier way to do that would be just to select those items, come over to my collections tab, and create a new collection from the selected items, and I'll call this right hand housing. And I can apply an action to that collection of items. So I'm going to create a new group here, and it's going to be separate housings and replace seal. And I want it to go to the bottom. And let me get a good viewpoint, maybe something like, let's see where we left off with the screws. So that's where we left off with the screws coming out. Maybe I want to rotate it just a little bit and bring it down. Position it right about there, and now I'm going to create a new action, and I'm going to choose the disconnect object because what I want to do is just flash and transform that collection of items, and the object I want to act on is that collection. Come down here and specify my transform value, start at its initial position. Maybe I just want to pull it out to right about there. Select apply. Now what I want to do is, so I wanted to, the reason why I didn't say remove is because I didn't want to make it invisible. I just want to disconnect it so that it still stays visible on screen. And now I want to pull this seal out. So I'm actually going to choose to select the seal and choose to remove the object, and I just want to transform and make it invisible. I don't want it to flash because I'm actually going to change the color of that seal as it's coming out to red, showing that it's the bad seal, and then I'll change it to green when I am putting it back in. So I'm going to remove that object. Maybe I'll bring it up and out, and maybe I want to rotate it a bit to be something like that. Bring it out a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. I'm trying to keep some room up here because I want to put a call out on screen as well. So I can, maybe that's where I want it to be its final position. Another thing I want to happen at that same time while it's transitioning positions is I want it to change color. So I'm going to select that object and apply an action from the miscellaneous group as set object to color value. I can adjust the value right here to red because this is going to be the bad seal that's being pulled out. And I also want to add a call out at this time, and that's where I'm going to pull it from my object gallery. I'd mentioned this as we were looking at the published output. The object gallery not only houses things like call outs, dimensions, panel images, and panel text, but it also houses the tools that we're going to use if we were to choose to do that. So we have some out of the box, but I've added some of my own. The air gun and the half-inch ratchet, things like that. I went out online and found those tools, imported them into Cortona, and just created a new object gallery item. But what I want to add is a call out, so I just right-click on it and say Add to Project, and I want the leader line to point right to the top of this seal, and I'm going to adjust it so I can bring it into screen. And I want my leader to come from the left bottom, and I want to say replace with new, and I can bump the size of that text up a little bit if I want. My reference lines I've already specified. The appearance I can change the background, maybe to have it be a yellow background, and I can increase the size of the border so there's a nice thick black line around the border, and say OK. Maybe I want to adjust its position a little bit so that it's in screen to be something like right there. I can hit apply, and I actually want to apply, so notice that it added that as a new item. I want to apply an action to that item, and it's going to be show it, because I don't want it to be shown throughout the whole animation. I just want it to show for this step, so I need to show the object, and I want the removal of the seal and the changing of the color to be happening at the same time. So I'm going to create an action union of those two items, or two actions rather. And I want the call out to become visible right after the disconnecting of the two housings, or the separating of the two housings. So I can simply move that up with a couple clicks, refresh, and go back a step, and we'll see our animation right now. So the caliper housings separate, and we'll see it as the seal comes out, it changes color to red. I have my call out there. Now while it's hidden, I want the color to be changed to green. So I'm going to select my item, and maybe I will now say set object color value to green. So that way when it comes visible again, it'll be green in color. Now what I want to do is install the seal after it's been removed, and I just want to make visible and transform the object. I'll come in here and set my transform value back to its initial location. And I can add a command to this action. The command I want to add is restoring the color. So I'm going to come right here in my procedure editor and add a new command. It's going to be restore color. Refresh my animation. And so now let's take a look at this animation in its entirety. The housings separate, the seal comes out and turns red, comes back into view, it's going to be green, and goes back into place, and it changed back to its original color of being black. The next thing I want to do is hide that call out, hide the object, and then I want to connect the right-hand housing collection. Put it back at its initial position, apply, OK. Now what's really cool about this is since we have our disassembly and seal replacement completed, we need to now reassemble, create the steps to reassemble the caliper housing. And what I'm going to do is duplicate those actions to go from 1, 2, 3, 4 back down to 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to duplicate those, and I can simply invert them to be install operations. So just with a few clicks here, I don't have to go through the workflow of creating the rebuild actions, and I can change their text maybe to be install the caliper screws, of course I want to change their numbering and change the text to go from remove to install. And you'll see if I expand these steps, the actions, when I did the invert command, they went from remove actions to install actions, and they reversed the order. So let's say we went to the step where the seal was being replaced. We'll see that by duplicating those actions and inverting them, that this thing is automatically going to put itself back together. We'll see the screws come back in. The arrows are now going to rotate clockwise for installation. The brake pads will go back to their initial position, and the guide pins will be installed. And then we'll, at the very end, we'll end up in the same camera position that we started off in. So we're done with our animation, and now this is really sharp. I'm ready to create my document, and pretty much with one click of a button I can generate that document. And since I took the time to put in my general information about the job here in my metadata, it automatically populates the values for my document editor. Notice that the metadata that was extracted from the CAD files created our parts list, and down here in our tasks we have the text that's kind of it gives us a rough outline to start with, and of course we're able to type freely in here if we wanted to. One thing I kind of skimped on was creating images for every single step, but we do have our images available for us here. And I do want to insert an image maybe on step 2. Save my document, and let's take a preview of what our published output would look like. So this is similar to what we saw when we looked at the very beginning. When we looked at the published output, we can see that we have our general information about our job here. The bill of materials is here. The resources, we didn't create any. The instructions are all here. The document in its entirety is here. If I wanted to play that animation, this is what the end user is going to see. If you're anything like me, when something breaks on my car or motorcycle, the first thing I do is go to YouTube and watch a video on how I'm going to fix it. So pictures are great, but man, when we have something like this, there's going to be little error in completing a job. So that quick, I mean, we were able to create a document from start to finish that's going to convey to a technician on exactly what he needs to do. Bolts going back in, and in essence, to save time, I think you get the general idea. What I would like to do is open up a manual so you can see how those two things differ. all I did here was, this animation was originally created as a work instruction, and all I did was did a open as and selected a different specification. All my animation is retained, and the only thing that I need to change is my document. So notice that everything is the same as that we just did, except for the document is governed by a different specification. And so if we were to preview this output, again, this is going to be a service manual now. And let me turn on my 3D graphics window. The main difference here is on the left-hand side of the screen. If I want to see 2D figures, I can do that as well. These were all created inside of the Cortona3D editor. Replace the old seal with new. So same job, just a different layout as a manual as opposed to a work instruction. It's all up to you on how you want your look and feel to be of your published output, and that is governed by the specification. You have the control to edit those as well. We deliver some out of the box, but you can adjust that to meet your own business needs. So that pretty much wraps it up for the live demo. Let me finish up with a few slides here. Just wrapping up here with a few rapid author benefits. This is an easy to use and intuitive product. There's no CAD experience required. We have integrated and linked graphics and text. This is going to be a single tool for all authoring. We're going to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the TechPubs group. It's flexible and configurable to meet your business needs, and we're going to publish documentation that will give a richer end user experience, which is going to help them decrease their user effectiveness. We're going to increase our customer satisfaction, and we'll also increase the retention and profitability of our customers. I want to thank you for your time today. I'll leave up on screen here our contact information a little bit. My name's Paul Mass. I'm the application engineer. I'll also throw up Kim Corbridge's information. He's the sales manager here. You can contact either one of us if you have questions about Cortona3D, or you want to set up a live demo either on site at your company or over the web. And for those of you who are existing customers of ours, I do want to remind you that we do have a tech support line. We pride ourselves on our tech support capabilities, so I have that information up there for you as well. Again, thank you for your time this afternoon. Please come back to our website and check us out often, as we're constantly posting new things. Thanks, and have a great day.